As a product designer, you might have considered to move to another country for personal reasons or for professional reasons. Obviously, not everyone has the luxury to do so, but if you do, how do you decide which country to move to? I tried to answer this question and I analyzed countries and also cities within the US based on a few parameters. Designer salaries, taxes, jobs for designers, cost of living, and quality of life. Obviously, you cannot cover all of the parameters that are important for people when they move to a different country. For some people, it will be really important how good the healthcare is, parental leave, visa options, citizenship paths, weather, safety. So use this as a base or as an addition to the research that you're already doing. So let's start with salaries. First of all, where did I get this data from? The data comes from companies called Pave. When I was doing research for my last book, I was looking for information on salaries and gap between salaries for individual contributors and managers in product design. So I've seen that Pave's CEO is publishing a lot of data on salaries for software engineers. So I reached out and asked if I can get the same data for product designers. A lot of salary information for product designers is today stored at Glassdoor and Levels FYI. These two websites are great, but all the information there is self-reported. It is different from Pave because Pave is actually integrated with real HR systems of companies. And we see not just what people said they're making, but what they're actually making, because this is actually showing the numbers that company wires to these people as a salary. Let's take a look at the countries with the highest salaries. Designers on the same levels are compared on this graph, which means seniors compared to seniors, directors to directors, and so on. So what you can see on this graph is that the US is the number one, and the rest of the countries are mentioned in relation to the US, which means that US is 100% and Germany is 54%. It means that a designer on the same level will earn 54% of what a designer in the US would earn. This graph includes only the base pay, so it doesn't include equity because unfortunately I don't have access to this information, but I would assume that salaries and equity would correlate across countries. So we can see that the countries with the highest salaries are the US, Switzerland, Ireland, Australia, Singapore, Canada, Netherlands, New Zealand, UK, Israel, Finland, Denmark, Germany, Japan, Belgium, and so on. In the description, I will leave a link where you can see all of these graphs and you can zoom in and see the rest of the countries. Since US is the number one country, I also did a breakdown on cities inside the US. The number one is San Francisco, then New York, Seattle, Boston, Portland, Denver, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, San Diego, and so on. So I went fairly quickly through the salaries because if you don't take into consideration the taxes that you're going to pay on the salaries, these numbers can be a little bit misleading. For example, if we take a look at the previous data and look at Germany and South Korea, we will see that in Germany, a product designer on the same level will earn 20% more. But if we take into consideration the taxes, the after-tax salary will be actually the same in both countries. This chart shows top 20 countries with the highest salaries for product designers after tax. It compares between designers on the same level, specifically around mid to senior level designers. When I was calculating taxes, I included all mandatory payments that you would have to pay in relation to your salary. So not only your income tax, but also any social contributions that you have to pay, pension if it's mandatory, and so on. Obviously, the level and the type of social benefits that you will get at each of these countries will be very different. Also, when calculating taxes, I was taking into consideration a case of a single person with no kids and no write-offs. Obviously, if your case is different, the numbers will be different, but I assume that the percentages of taxes will correlate across countries also for other cases. So since the US is the number one, I also did a breakdown of the cities inside the US. And the same as between countries where taxes can heavily affect your take-home salary, same is true also within the US because the taxes between different states will be different. For example, if we compare two designers on the same level, one is living in Dallas and the second one is living in Portland, the one in Dallas would be making around $114,000 per year, and the one in Portland would earn $130,000 per year. But after taxes, they would earn the same. So even though the difference in their salary is around $16,000 per year, both of them will actually earn $88,000 after taxes. So in order to be able to make these salaries, we want to be in a country that has a lot of jobs for product designers. To check how many job openings different countries have, I looked at this website, and they aggregate different job boards from different countries, from different sources, into one in real time. So you want to be in a country that also has high salaries and also a lot of jobs. So on this chart, I combine these two parameters. The more country is on the right, the higher the salary, and the more countries on the top, the more job openings it has. There are two countries that I removed from this graph. One is the US. This is the absolute outlier also on salaries and also the job postings. So it would be in the very right top corner. And the second country is India, which would be on the very left top corner. So there's a lot of job openings in India, but very low salaries. So remove these two countries from the graph, not to stretch it too much to the sides and to make it a little bit easier to read. So basically, ideally, we want to be in the right top corner. And the countries that offer high salaries and a lot of job postings are the US, Canada, United Kingdom, Israel, and Singapore. Countries that offer a decent ratio of job openings and salaries is Germany and France. And other countries offer a decent ratio are Japan, Spain, South Korea, Poland, Australia, and China. So if the country is not appearing on this graph, it means that this country has very little amount of job openings for product designers. Another way to look at the jobs market is to try and predict where most of product design jobs will be in the future. Now, how can we do that? One way to do that is to see if we can answer the question where companies are most likely to open new offices in the future. And companies are likely to open new offices in countries that already have large talent pools. So if there is a country that has a lot of engineers, a lot of designers, it is easier for a company to hire people there. To check how large is the talent pool in different countries, we can look at the number of designers who are already employed in this country. So as on the previous graph, the more the country is on the right, the higher is the salary. And the more country is on the top, the larger is the talent pool in this country. So ideally, you want to be in a country that pays high salaries and that has large talent pool, which is on the right top corner. The countries that offer a great ratio are the US, Canada, UK, Australia, Israel, and Germany. As on the previous graph, I removed the US from here because it would skew the graph a little bit and make it less readable. Basically, US is on the right top corner of this graph. Now, what if we take the top 20 countries that pay the highest salaries after tax that we already found previously, and we apply the same logic here, and we look which of these top paying countries have also the biggest talent pools. So here are the results, and the best ratio is in the US, Switzerland, Australia, UK, and Canada. And a very good ratio is in Israel, Netherlands, Ireland, and Singapore. Now, if we want to look at the salaries considering the cost of living in different countries, it seems that it correlates quite strongly. So it is really hard to find countries that pay very good salaries but super cheap. On this graph, for example, we can see as outliers Singapore and Switzerland, but this data actually is before tax. And those two countries offer relatively low tax. So after tax, they will be probably closer to this area that they called fair value. And here is the data for the cities inside the US. So the cities that offer the best ratio between salary and cost of living are Seattle, Miami, Las Vegas, Austin, Denver, and Houston. The next parameter is quality of life. I used a life index by Numbeo, and they take into consideration the next things: cost of living and purchasing power, affordability of housing, pollution, including air and water, crime rates, health system quality, and traffic. So again, on this graph, the more countries to the right, the higher the salary, and the more country to the top, the higher is the quality of life. So you can see that the best ratio of salary and quality of life is in Netherlands, Finland, Denmark, New Zealand, Australia, and Japan. As I mentioned before, in the description, I will put a link to all of these graphs so you can zoom in and play with them and look at the countries that you are maybe specifically interested in. And here is a summary of this analysis that I just showed you. Now, obviously in this table, it's not binary that some country has a good salary or bad salary. But I marked the countries that in the previous graphs that I showed you offered a good ratio between salary and other parameters. So it gives a simplistic overview on the analysis that I just showed you. And if you're looking for more nuanced approach, you should go back and look more closely at each of the parameters that you're particularly interested in. You can see that the US is the absolute number one, then Switzerland, Singapore, Australia, Ireland, Canada, UK, Israel, Germany, Japan, and Netherlands. If you found this analysis helpful, feel free to check out my books. I write about how designers can grow their careers, and I will add links in the description.